Science Vessel. He has lots of tanks. He has Vultures, he has Goliaths. Those Arbiters, 3 Arbiters have been lost. One of them definitely needlessly by Tempest. And Fantasy is just getting an absolute vice grip on this match right here. Sip of water for me. Just Tempest, it's like he's needlessly moving around those Dragoons. He's trying to put on some pressure, but Fantasy just has such a good positioning. Tanks everywhere on both sides, so those Dragoons and Zealots just don't know where to attack. Can't go for that flanking position that they need. And this is, of course, what those bridges offer to Terrans. If the Terrans can get this far in the game, they can set up an absolute defensive turtling position around the upper or the lower part of the map, depending on where they're sitting. They should be able to just hold the bridges and shell completely. But if you prevent the Terrans from getting to this stage, then you can definitely take an advantage. So not only has Tempest allowed Fantasy, who we're here seeing a first-person view from, allowed Fantasy to harass him so heavily, he's also allowed him to set up a defense position. Ooh, EMP going off on that Arbiter, and quite a few of those ground forces as well, so the Arbiter not going to be able to stasis any forces there. Tempest, meanwhile, trying to set up an expansion. I think he's in such trouble. He's trying to macro as well as he can, but he's being harassed so heavily. Fantasy just playing his game. Fantasy just has absolute control of this match here. No upgrades, meanwhile, for him as far as I can see. No armor upgrades, nothing. I think Fantasy at this point is probably a pretty heavy upgrades. He's at... Ooh, I can't tell from here. Either 2-1 upgrades or 1-1 upgrades. 1 weapons, 1 upgrades, meanwhile, for Tempest. And another engagement come here, does tanks in perfect position. Dragoons again going to get shelled. Observer gets taken down. Arbiter in deep danger there, and that Science Vessel also not going to help. He's just going to be able to EMP that entire amount of forces. So many mines also going off on a lot of these forces. Meanwhile, now, Fantasy moving in on that expansion there, but instantly moving back a little bit. Maybe thought... or some defending forces there. He definitely doesn't want to get caught from behind, but no, going to move in again with Vultures and tanks. Going to be able to take out that 8 o'clock position without any serious trouble, and now thinking of taking the 3 o'clock position. Tempest was trying to take that position, but that's going to be completely prevented. Fantasy should be able to take that out. So these are the only ground forces of Tempest. Meanwhile, those heavy amount of Dragoons and Zealots, as well as Arbiters. That's the problem. He also doesn't have anything else. He has nothing but Arbiters and Dragoons and Zealots. I don't think he can afford anything else. He's now going around clearing some mines, but he needs Templar. He has no Storms, nothing. Meanwhile, a barracks being put down there to block movement for Tempest. So Tempest is in such serious trouble. Now this base of his, the lower left corner base, also being shelled. His 8 o'clock has been taken down. Now his far 8 o'clock is going to be taken down. EMP going off on the Arbiter and being killed right afterwards. So no stasis going off, nothing. Sciences are there. Zealots trying to move in, but not getting any bombs. No mines to drag. Trying to kill as much as they can. Dragoons all get shelled. Now Vultures, though, finally moving in. Fantasy did lose quite a few of his blocking forces, but of course the tanks, meanwhile, just managing to shell and just moving in position with even more Vultures to block. So that's going to be pretty bad. A covert ops, meanwhile, for Fantasy. So he might actually be preparing a nuke here. He's using barracks to block off some forces there, and he has several command centers don't have anything attached to them. So we might be actually seeing something funky from Fantasy, but might be thinking of finishing this off with absolute style. If he manages to nuke Tempest, that's going to be quite an amazing sight to see. Meanwhile, Tempest now finally mined out at his main. He's naturally probably in pretty bad position also. He doesn't have enough mining to support his army at all. And Fantasy with such a immense advantage. 2 barracks is going off, so that's probably most likely for ghosts and for nukes. So Fantasy's now just thinking of doing this style, probably maybe just delaying here with his ground forces, wanting to nuke Tempest to death rather than completely finish off. Might actually have to retract that statement because he's actually moving downwards now with some of his forces. Maybe he's just, doesn't want to play too cockily. He knows that he should be able he should be able to nuke nuke Tempest without any huge trouble, but actually might be thinking of just playing standard. Now moving in with these forces, with these tank Goliaths and Vultures, almost nothing to defend here for Tempest. So I think Tempest is pretty much just one step away from GGing. Meanwhile, he has moved out into the natural of Fantasy with some forces, Arbiter and some Dragoons. There's some nice defense matrices on some tanks there, but that's going to prevent the tank from being taken down, and Dragoon's still in their position. Zealots got taken down, doing some damage there. Some SCVs get taken down, mining being prevented. Now that Arbiter and Dragoon's moving into the main and into the back now, definitely going to get some mining, so he actually should be able to see those barracks as they're probably producing ghosts, and the nukes that are going to be coming his way, although I don't know if he's going to be able to stop that or not. Now going to move in and prevent some mining from that base. Most definitely going to see those barracks. Definitely going to be expecting those ghosts now. Going to be expecting a nuke going off on one of his bases. I'm going to see which base it is. Several command centers I see with nothing attached to them. Those barracks still flashing. Yep, first 2 ghosts now. They're going to start shooting at those forces there. I don't think they're actually cloaked. They're just taking random shots. Finally, okay, Comset going off on Dragoons. You're going to get taken down. The Arbiter should be dying pretty soon. We're going to see if Fantasy actually has enough time before Tempest GG's, before he nukes. Maybe just thinking of, just as soon as the laser goes off, and we're going to see what happens. Goliath shooting at the Arbiter. We're going to see if the Arbiter manages to do something. Oh, he recalls right into the middle of that tank line, so that's pretty good. We're going to see, but so many tank shots. Quite a few tanks do get taken down due to those Zealot bombs, but, but still several tanks still alive. But still lost so many of those forces, those Zealots and those Dragoons. Tempest doing his best, try to hold off imminent doom as long as he can. 4 ghosts, meanwhile, on the way. I don't see any nukes, although I don't see any nukes for Fantasy at this point. Another recall going off into the main, so Tempest desperately trying to do some last-minute damage, trying to do something to get back into this game, although I'm pretty sure that's completely impossible. GG! Going off for Tempest, that last thing there. Not going to see any nukes. Tempest, Fantasy decided just to play standard as well. Didn't delay anything. Made sure Tempest did not allow Tempest any sort of comeback in that game. And I think just from the middle point of the game, Fantasy had an absolute advantage there. I just didn't see from that point on. There was just a certain time in the game, there was a point of no return. After Fantasy had managed to do such heavy economic damage with his vultures and dropships, I think it was the point of no return, because Tempest just didn't counter back with any of his own harassment, and he didn't have upgrades for his armies, so his armies were always under completely weaklings compared to Fantasy's army. Fantasy had always an advantage, and he did almost no counter harassment when it was necessary. His counter harassment came way too late, and with no upgrades and no cannons to defend his bases until far too late, he just lost the grip of the game completely to Fantasy. So good play. We're going to see the winners match pretty soon between Jangby and Fantasy, and the losers match between Tempest and Iris. Ranching out.